Yeah, over to you, Chris, for our very first topic of the day.
Right, okay, so for my first topic, I'd like to talk about Dracula. I don't know what comes to mind when you think of arguably the world's most famous vampire. You might think of Christopher Lee, who played the vampire 10 times in his career. You might think of the classic vampiric tropes of blood-sucking or wooden stakes. I mean, for all I know, you might think of beans on toast, but that's normally because you never eat before you come on air. But probably what you don't think of is an Irish chieftain. It's not often that you think of vampires and lilting Irish accents. Or maybe you do. And again, I'm not the police. I'm not here to judge. So the most famous account of a vampire is probably Bram Stoker's 1897 Gothic horror classic, the story of Count Dracula, in which he moves from Transylvania to England. Think A Place in the Sun, but with no rain and more undead, unless you're in Milton Keynes. I mean, it's widely speculated that Dracula is based on Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century prince of Wallachia, who was a bigger fan of pikes than even the keenest angler. But for my first topic, I'm going to put to you a theory that Dracula isn't based on Vlad the Mad Lad.
Sorry. That was just quite a preamble. It's like you've just done this whole long spiel about Dracula just to go, anyway, I'm here to talk to you about...
Well, it's the old bait and switch. Another one for you fishing fans. Well, I'm going to do the theory that he's not based on Vlad the Mad Lad, but instead a 5th century Irish warlord called Abhartach. So here's the sort of theory behind this. Well, no, here's the explanation behind this theory.
Here's the theory behind the theory.
It's got layers. It's an onion of a theory. Okay. So Bram Stoker had worked as a civil servant in Dublin, and side fact, the first novel he ever wrote was called The Duties of Clerks in Petty Sessions in Ireland, a satirical account of the boring bureaucratic lifestyle he was trying to escape. So for anyone who's listening, who's maybe bored at work daydreaming about vampires, it's not all a complete waste of time. Even the best do that. And Stoker never actually travelled any further east than Vienna and never even visited Romania. According to Professor Elizabeth Miller, an expert on Stoker at the Memorial University of Newfoundland, there's absolutely no mention of Vlad the Stab Happy in his research notes.
So just to pick your
jump in.
Mistake then was... you mentioned Newfoundland. Well, you accidentally said Foundland. Is there an old Foundland? Or is that just land?
I think that's just land.
Isn't by definition all Foundland?
Well, it's just like
new at the time of founding, and then later just.
I mean, all explorers have to go from somewhere, so that's the found land, and you try to find find land.
Yeah, all land could be determined at one point to have been Newfoundland.
Yeah, I mean now that I think about it, it's never occurred to me that is the laziest naming of a place. It's like you can mock New South Wales for arriving like on this Australian like shore and it reminding you of Cardiff, but Newfoundland is just the laziest. It's not even naming it after your monarch. It's just
it's just some land.
What's this? Yeah, what's like? Should we call it rocks? No, that's a tad simplistic. This is Newfoundland. So it's contended that Stoker wasn't inspired by Vlad the not-so-tame Impaler, but instead Irish folklore, presumably from the time he was doodling shirtless sparkly vampires in the margins of boring court documents. The folk story in question goes like this. Abhartach was a brutal 5th century warlord who ruled over a small kingdom in what is modern-day Abhartach. Apologies to any Irish listeners if I've butchered any of these Irish pronunciations. In County Londonderry in Northern Ireland, which when I googled it, I learned that the average price of a three-star hotel there is £83 a night, which seems pretty reasonable, but not particularly relevant.
Okay.
Be more amazed by that. Yeah. But anyway, so Abhartach was known for being particularly violent, was believed to use dark magic, and here comes the vampire link, apparently drank blood. In the story...
blood or just blood? because could just be like not waiting for his black pudding to finish.
Yeah, how do you like your black pudding? Very runny.
Very raw, yeah.
Let's, for the purposes of the narrative, let's go with human blood. Not a sentence I thought I'd say. The villagers under his rule rose up against him and asked another chieftain called Cathane to help, and they managed to kill him, burying him standing up as befitted a Celtic chieftain. But the story goes that Abhartach rose from the grave and demanded a bowl of blood from the wrists of his subjects to sustain him. And at this point, Cathane sought the advice of a Christian saint who sort of conveniently had very specific but like the right answers. So, this dude goes, kill him with a wooden stake made of yew wood, bury the body upside down, and whack a decent sized boulder on the body to prevent him from rising again. Which is a pretty good answer to pull out your ass if someone says, I think there's a dude that keeps coming back from the dead.
Giant rock. Always a winner.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few. Well, I was going to say there are very few problems that can't be solved with a giant rock, but that's definitely not true. How do you solve the climate crisis? Giant rock.
Giant rock from space.
Well, yeah, I mean,
or cause one. It would give us a new climate crisis either way.
Yeah, really shift the priorities about, I guess. So Cathane did that, and it seemed to do the trick. And there's today there's a capstone in the town of Slaftafety, I think that's how it's pronounced.
That just sounds like how good is this? Wow, Slaftafety. Let's have a Slaftafety morning. I apologize. There's our singular Irish listener gone.
Goodbye. We can only apologise. But apparently that's where he's supposedly buried. And Abhartach...
I mean, you wouldn't want to dig him up, would you? If somebody's going through all this effort with giant rock, and somebody says he's buried over here, you just go, I'll just take your word for it, mate.
Yeah, that's the point. You're going to do some renovations in the future, and there's a very old and very irate vampire straining to get under a boulder.
Mm-hmm.
But 2020 was weird. 2021, I reckon it's got it in it. If we've not got real life Cthulhu, then let's have vampires.
I mean, all this nonsense did start with a bat, so I mean, it's very on brand.
Yeah, but they're so tasty, though. You can't blame them. When you deep fry the wings and they're just super crispy. So the folktale about this supposed vampire was retold centuries later in Patrick Weston Joyce's The Origin and History of Irish Names and Places. An absolute banger. Published 12 years before Stoker wrote Dracula. And to top it off in this theory, the Celtic word Dracula means tainted blood. So it's theorized that this word inspired Stoker to call his name Dracula.
So once again, the Irish have something, and the British came along and was like, I'll take this. I'll profit from this. Thank you very much.
And also, we've managed to blame the Romanians. It's like a modern Britain in one easy story.
See, this is us reeling our one Irish listener back in. We're like, oh, sorry, we mispronounced a lot of these place names. But on the other hand, colonialism was bad. Hot take.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully that's an even-handed approach. So that's essentially the story and the theory behind Dracula being Irish instead. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any, modern film adaptations involving Dracula, but they don't lean into the Irish.
There's one with Keanu Reeves, and I'm sure he does a terrible accent. And so I just think it could have been even better. He could have been doing a terrible Irish accent instead of a terrible... I think he does a terrible British accent. I can't remember. It's been a while.
It's weird that bad British accents seem to be so much worse than bad American accents. Like Brits go over there and they do a sort of generic sort of Doctor House style grumbly American accent. Whereas was it Robin Hood?
Kevin Costner. in Prince of Thieves, where he's.
I wasn't even thinking that one. I was thinking of was it Gerard Butler who did it
Oh
even
no, Russell
worse?
Crowe.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Just like.
Don't say it to him though, because he stormed out of an interview when he was questioned on this.
I've seen that interview, and he goes, "I think you'll find that's an authentic Nottingham accent."
Yeah, I mean, I like Russell Crowe, and I think he could also probably beat me in a fight. So, you do you, Russell.
Oh yeah. Neither of us are trained actors, and as I see it in the live chat, Courtney Round says, "I've heard the two of you do an American accent," which is absolutely true. And
yes, and terrible.
Yeah, the only
no
one
matter what, it's foghorn leghorn.
Yeah, it's essentially a sort of a frazzled mining prospector from the old timey West / foghorn leghorn. So I've got
/ Colonel Sanders.
Like, well, yeah, just a generic, a southern gentleman in a white coat.
Yeah, even if we're trying to do a New York accent, it somehow ends up being foghorn leghorn.
Well, I say I'm walking here. So that's essentially all I've got on Dracula. I don't know whether you've got anything to add to a vampiric